Welcome to Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and this is where characters gather. It is a Monday, humid, muggy morning in which rain is anticipated and lighting is not great. So, we are, however, going to talk about my tremendous reading week last week. Today is the 6th of May, and so far I have read more than one book every day in May for the cumulative tally. It's impressive, and I'm very pleased, and I have no DNFs for last week, so yay me. So, I've said that word a lot. I should stop. What did I read last week? Let's talk about the arc first. That would be Loyally Luke by Pepper Basham. This was an arc courtesy of NetGalley, and thus this is my fair and honest review in exchange for the arc. This is the third book in the Skymar series. It was highly anticipated, and it was enjoyable. It was not stellar. It was not Izzy. It was not Penelope. Luke, and Pepper has said this, was based on her dad, and her dad has died in the last couple of years, and so I understand my problems with Luke, and I understand why it happened. It doesn't mean that as a reader, I'm happy with the situation. So, in Authentically Izzy and Positively Penelope, Luke is in both books, and he is the same Luke, in both books. Stoic, grumpy, flannel wearing, beard, not interested in romance, likes to tease, Izzy and Penelope, and is protective of them. He's your quintessential brother. Whereas Izzy and Penelope, in both of their books, begin the story in one way and conclude the story after much personal growth. Unfortunately for me, Luke began as Luke as you met him in Authentically Izzy, and other than falling in love in Loyally Luke, he is the same exact Luke as you met in the first book. There is no vast personal growth. There is no revelation. There is no fundamental change in Luke. I didn't particularly enjoy the romance. I found it incredibly surface level. You keep getting these hints of things in Ellie's past, and it's briefly covered, and by briefly, I mean it's an incredibly slim surface layer icing of her past, and then it's never spoken of again. The entire book felt more like an homage to Pepper's dad than it was the story of Luke and Ellie falling in love. And ultimately, I didn't hate it. I didn't fall in love with it. I did tear up a little bit at the end, but it wasn't the deep character growth and believable love story of, let's say, Izzy and Brody or Penelope and Matt. And there are orphans in this story, and the orphan story arc ended incredibly abruptly, out of the blue, not at all anticipated. Nothing really about this one worked for me, unfortunately. And this is the first time I can honestly say that about a Pepper book. That there was just, it was flat. There was no joy. I didn't find the romance believable. I didn't enjoy the character of Luke. I mean, he was Luke, and that was great, but it was the same Luke I met in Izzy. So, yeah, the whole thing was just, it was flat for me. Okay. So, let's talk about what else I read this week. So, I did technically finish The Fellowship of the Ring by Tolkien. I listened to the NPR version of the book on Audible Plus. It is a 3.5-hour version of the book, and I do not recommend it at all. I honestly do not recommend it at all. It's incredibly abbreviated. Large parts of the story nuances are missing. I have restarted The Fellowship of the Ring. This is the version I'm currently listening to. I should say the NPR version I got from my library. The current version is from Audible Plus. I've pulled the book out to physically read as well. The NPR version it's bad. I'm not going to lie. It's bad. Not only is it short, but it's just a series of events strung together, and there's no backstory. There's no explanation as to what's going on. There's none of the poetry is there. None of the singing is there. None of the tension. It highly do not recommend that version of the book. The Audible Plus version I'm listening to is much better. It's all there. I'm getting the backstory. I'm beginning to feel connected to the characters rather than, listening to 3.5 hour adaptations and checking the book off my list. So I will tell you all about that one next week when I truly finish it. Also on Audible Plus this week, in addition to reading, was the Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I read this physically and I listened to the audiobook. And this is fantastic. I would, however, recommend the condensed audio version, which, is still in excess of 18 hours, versus the unabridged physical. And if you know me, I do not like abridged versions of books. They drive me nuts. They really do. However, if this manuscript appeared to a modern agent publishing house, it would get picked up, but it would also be heavily edited to take out some of the, I don't want to say filler and I don't want to say fluff, but it's very heavy on detail that in the end doesn't add to the story. And there is a very definite story in this book. There is a very definite story of revenge and intrigue and, suspense This is the quintessential novel of revenge is a dish best served cold. And I mean that in the best possible way. This does not, take place in a year or two. This is decade plus of well executed, well plotted, well thought out puppet master pulling the strings of those who wronged him revenge story. And I understand why it has its place among the classics. That being said, the abridged version on audio was much better. It wasn't, a tightly abridged story. They didn't cut out all of the details. It eliminated a lot of the descriptive backfiller points that really would have worked when the book was published and don't necessarily work today. And I'm glad I picked up the audio. I'm glad I listened to it. I'm glad I read it physically. And it will sit on my shelf proudly for the rest of my life. But I can check that Dave book off and be happy about it. So I misspoke earlier. I do have a DNF for the week, and it's not really a DNF because I read more than half of it. Here's a copy of the actual cover of the book, The Tomb of Atuan, which is part of the Books of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin, and I read 75% of this book. I could not tell you what it's about. I could not tell you why I was reading it. Her writing is a struggle for me. I don't say that lately. I am not usually one that struggles to understand what is going on in a book. I have read very complicated books in my life. I have read books with, a lot of characters. I have read books with a lot of action or a lot of interwoven things. And in her writing, I do not understand what is going on and how they're connected. And this is supposedly book 2 after The Wizard of Earthsea. So how it relates to book 2, other than I think the wizard from Earthsea appears at like 65% of the way through the second book. So this book starts out with a 4-year-old child in the field with her parents, and her dad's like, don't care about that child. They're going to come take her when she's 6 and you will never see her again. And next thing you know, said child has been taken. She never sees her parents again. And she is the priestess of the Undertomb. And it was a miserable story. It was just miserable. This poor child. You felt for her. The chances are very high that I am DNFing the rest of this series. And Dave can grumble at me, but that's fine. I will remind him that way back in 2019 when I bought this book, was it 2019? No, it was 2020. No, it was 2019. I bought it on the Black Friday sale. I paid a fraction of the price for it, and thus I don't feel bad. If he wants to read it, I will leave it on the shelves. Otherwise, I will hide it away in the bedroom or something. But her writing is not for me. It is just esoteric and convoluted and bad. It was just bad. You guys, it was just bad. Okay, next up are two cozy mysteries. First up would be Beaches, Bungalows, and Burglaries by Tanya Capes. This is the first book in the series. Series name is right here. My first book by this author. And our protagonist is named Mae West. West is her married name, so her parents didn't saddle her with that. And the premise is her husband, she's married to this older man, and he's running a Ponzi scheme. He gets caught. He gets, tried and thrown in white-collar prison, and Mae is exonerated. And her husband, I believe it was unintentionally, had one piece of property in her name solely. She didn't know about it. It was a campground in Normal, Kentucky. And that's all she has left. And so she moves to Normal with the intention of selling a quick sale of the campground so that she has, something to live on. Turns out the campground is trash. Her husband has, conned a lot of town members out of their life savings. His dead body shows up in the lake in the campground. She's a suspect. And what this ends up being is this utterly charming, cozy, set in a small town in Kentucky, centered around a campground and a late 20-something woman finding her way on her own and falling in love with a small town that she did not anticipate staying in. I think I will continue this series. It was not a challenging read. It was not a, sit down and think read. It was, however, good, escapist, cozy fiction. And if you know me, I love a good cozy. So, yeah. And, we did travel the country in our RV for 3 years. So, I know something about living in a camper. Okay, admittedly, mine is a, nice big toy hauler with a fireplace and a bathtub, but still. Okay, so the second cozy of the week was For Whom the Bread Rolls by Sarah Fox. This is the second in the Pancake House mystery series. And y'all, unsurprisingly, I love this one. This is Sarah Fox writes a very good mystery. She just does. The clues are there. There's a breadcrumb trail. There's twists. There's enough action. It isn't overly sappy. There's romance in this one. It is closed door. It's just charming. There's a cat and they rescue a dog, and I loved everything about this book. I have immediately pulled up the third book in the series to read. My brain is really enjoying cozies right now. And both of these were just easy to consume, bite-sized pieces of joy. And I can easily recommend Sarah Fox's series. She has multiples. I love them all. They all are just, if you want a cozy, not set in Britain, where a lot of them are set, Sarah Fox is a good one to pick up. They just are. And she doesn't set them all in the same part of the country. So if you want one that's set on the East Coast, she has a story series for that. You want one set on the West Coast, she has one for that. She has another series, I can't remember where it's set at the moment, but she spreads them out, what I'm trying to say. So, that was the cozies of the week. So if you watched my country spotlight video yesterday, which I will link down below, I said I was going to read Me, Frida, and the Secret of the Peacock Ring on Cinco de Mayo. I happened to read it on the 4th instead of the 5th, but this is a middle grade mystery by Angela Cervantes, and I loved it. It was a little twisty. It was a little educational. It was finding the importance of friends and doing the right thing and trusting your gut. It isn't a long read. It's like 220 pages. 220 pages. And, there's a little bit of Spanish thrown in, but it's all translated. It's a glimpse into Mexico City. I loved this. It was so enjoyable. And I have no hesitation, A, recommending it, and B, in the future, picking up something from this author. This was published in 2018, and there is no nonsense in it, if you're wondering. It's all, it's what middle grade fiction should be. There's some illustrations throughout. It was just delightful, and I truly enjoyed it. It was a glimpse into Mexico City. It was a glimpse backwards for me into what I loved about mysteries when I was reading them at this age. And I'm trying to find the other illustration here that I really loved. And of course, I'm not seeing it. And it was just, I don't read a lot of middle grade. I really don't. It doesn't, because I don't have kids and all of the family members are older than middle grade at this point. I'm not trying to recommend middle grade for anybody anymore, so I don't tend to read a lot of it. However, this is middle grade that totally worked, and wee little me would have just devoured back in the day. So it is an easy recommendation. Okay, so what am I currently reading? I'm still listening to Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. I will finish that up this week and probably immediately go into the Two Towers. And then I have started What the Wind Knows by Amy Harmon. I want to say, on chapter 7, and I am loving this. I will probably finish it this week. If you are following along on Discord, I'm trying to post my thoughts without spoilers in case you have notifications turned on and you don't want spoilers involved. However, it is a fantastic historical fiction. The time travel element, I have got to tell you, was very subtle, very unique, and I loved it. I love the Yeats poetry that's quoted. If the rest of the book continues the same way the first 6 chapters have, she's going to become an author I want to read her entire back catalog for. I have enjoyed every word of this book so far. It is fabulous. My brain wants something deeper. This definitely qualifies as something deeper and meaty. It has great characterization. It has, history and all the things. All the things I love are right there in that book. And yeah, I need to read it and find out. I just do. I totally do. So I'm trying to think if I missed anything this week. And I don't think I have. If I did, I'll talk about it next week. But that's what I've read last week. Slight little glimpse of what I'm going to read this week. chances are really high there's going to be another mystery involved. I do have an update for the 24 and 24 challenge for Dave. I have decided to give myself grace, and I'm going through the end of the year, and that is because, hang on, I'll show you why. Okay, I did forget to talk about one thing. That is Dawnshard by Brandon Sanderson. This is the novella between books 3 and books 4 of the Stormlight archive. Did not realize that when I picked it up. It is currently on Audible Plus until the end of May, as is Elantris and the short story for Elantris, which is Emperor's Soul. Those are probably actually going to be my next listen, so I get them in before the end of the year or the end of the month. And I picked up Dawnshard initially because it was mentioned in The Sunlit Man cover right here, which I talked about last week. And as a result of The Sunlit Man and Dawnshard, I realized that, by the way, Dawnshard is an excellent listen. It is obviously set in the Cosmere. I don't want to say it's fully acted, but it's very well done. It is an engaging seafaring story. The novella is 8 or 9 hours long, so it's not short. It was immensely enjoyable. And it just, between Dawnshard and Sunlit Man, I am very much in the mood for Sanderson, which really isn't a shock if, I get in that mood. I get in that mood. And I do have a Sanderson book, Rhythm of War, which is a 24 and 24 book for me from Dave. And I am technically on the 4th book. I have read books 1 through 3, and all 1,230 pages of this is waiting for me. And I could undoubtedly go pick it up. However, the truth of the matter is that I would then spend a lot of time on my PC and on my phone, flipping through the wiki, trying to remember how this character relates to this character, because of the amount of time that has passed since I last read the first 3 books in the series, and book 5 releases on December 6th. So I have decided, I'm probably insane for doing this, but that's okay. I have decided that I am going to reread the first 3 books before I get to book 4, so that I am caught up on the entire Stormlight archive when book 6 or book 5 releases on the 6th of December. And I have them on digital. I have the first 3 on digital, but I knew I was going to need to flag them and leave myself notes, and I don't find that doable on Kindle. Yes, I know you can, highlight stuff, but I can't. I physically need to flip back to stuff and read my own handwriting and why this was important. So over the weekend, I bought the first 3 books and the Arcanium Unbound, and books 1 and 3 have arrived. So book 1 is The Way of Kings, and book 3 is Oathbringer, and book 2, which is Words of Radiance, doesn't come until like the end of the month, and that's okay. And this is Arcanium Unbound, and this is a collection of novellas that are all Cosmere related. They are trying to find the table of contents here. Here's the table of contents. They are broken down by planet. And so, you know that Stormlight Archive takes place on Roshar. So you just go to the Roshar system, and it has Edge Dancer. And if you're reading the Mistborn, in the Mistborn series, both the first cycle and the second set of books, you know that that takes place on Scandria, and so you go to the Scandrian system, and so on and so forth. So this is a vital companion if you are reading Sanderson Cosmere, and it's probably the second or third time I've bought this. I think the first two got lost in moves. This one is permanently with me. I'm now just hanging on to it. So, long way of saying that's why I'm giving myself grace until the end of the year, because Sanderson books are all big, thick puppies. And if you are interested in reading along with me, I think I'm going to, I'm going to start in June. I'm going to take my time, in theory, reading through these. And so I will start in June with The Way of Kings, and I will probably take until the end of July. I say that, but if I take until the end of July to read this, that means August and September can be the Words of Radiance, which is book 2. October, no, that doesn't quite work. Maybe 6 weeks for each book. And then I can get all 4 books in before the end of the year. Or by the time the 5th book releases. It doesn't have a cover yet. It is Wind and something. Wind and Star. Wind and Soul. I'll put a picture of the cover as it currently stands right here. And so if there's any interest in reading along with me, drop me a comment down below. I will make room on the Discord for that, or start a Storygraph group, whatever. So let me know. And then I can get Rhythm of War read before the end of the year. Okay. That was a long, rambling way of saying I'm giving myself grace because my brain is silly. What did you read last week? What sparked your interest in this video? If you're interested in this, in the Stormlight Archive, read with me, let me know. Leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.